I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company, but as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico.
Donald Trump just dropped a political bombshell, and the shockwaves are hitting America's heartland. At a fiery rally in Pennsylvania, he declared war on John Deere, the $124 billion farming giant, threatening a massive 200% tariff on their products. The reason? John Deere is planning to move jobs to Mexico, and Trump is not having it. This isn't just about tractors. It's about American jobs, rising costs, and a potential trade war that could shake the entire economy. The question is, will this bold move save American manufacturing, or will it backfire and hurt the very farmers it's meant to protect?
Notifying John Deere right now, if you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
Donald Trump isn't holding back, and this time, his target is John Deere, one of the biggest names in American farming. At a fiery rally in Pennsylvania, he made a bold declaration. If John Deere goes through with its plan to move production of skid steers and compact loaders to Mexico, he will slap a 200% tariff on every single one of those products that gets imported back into the U.S. His message was loud and clear. American companies should stay in America, period. Trump argued that manufacturing jobs belong in the United States, not overseas. He framed this move as a battle for the American worker, one that he's willing to fight tooth and nail. His supporters erupted in cheers, rallying behind his promise to keep jobs at home. For many people in that crowd, it wasn't just about tractors, it was about something much bigger.
So that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%.
But not everyone is celebrating. Critics are sounding the alarm about the unintended consequences of tariffs this big. If John Deere gets hit with a 200% import tax, they won't just absorb the cost. They'll pass it on to consumers. That means higher prices for farmers, many of whom are already struggling to afford new equipment. And if Mexico or other countries retaliate with their own tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports, it could spark a trade war that leaves American farmers caught in the crossfire.
New tonight, John Deere is moving some production from Iowa to Mexico. The company is acquiring land there to build a facility that will be operational by 2026.
At first glance, it might seem like John Deere is turning its back on America. But when you take a closer look, there's more to the story. The reality is, manufacturing in the U.S. is becoming extremely expensive, and companies like John Deere are struggling to keep up. One of the biggest challenges is rising labor costs. Wages in the U.S. have increased significantly, and skilled workers, especially those in manufacturing, are in high demand. That's great for workers, but for companies trying to stay competitive, it means higher expenses. Inflation has also driven up the cost of raw materials, utilities, and transportation, making production even pricier. Then there's the global competition factor. Companies from countries with lower labor costs, like China, India, and Mexico, are able to produce similar agricultural equipment at a fraction of the price. That puts John Deere at a disadvantage, forcing them to look for ways to cut costs while still maintaining their market dominance.
The facility will produce mid-frame skid steer loaders and compact tract loaders. The move impacts workers in Dubuque, though it's unclear how many workers. The company says this is in response to rising manufacturing costs.
By moving some of its production to Mexico, John Deere could significantly reduce labor costs, making it cheaper to build equipment. It would also allow them to streamline supply chains, which means faster production and delivery times. Plus, being in Mexico could help John Deere expand into international markets, tapping into the growing demand for farming equipment in Latin America. But here's the catch. Moving production means American job losses. And that's where things get messy. Workers who have spent years, even decades, building these machines in the U.S. now face an uncertain future. Entire towns that depend on John Deere factories could suffer. That's why Trump and his supporters are furious. seeing this as yet another example of an American company choosing profits over people.
Well, U.S. corn farmers are urging Congress to stop what they say could be a looming catastrophe. It all stems from a new proposal in Mexico banning U.S. imports of genetically modified corn.
John Deere isn't just another big corporation, it's a symbol of American farming. Its green and yellow machines are as American as apple pie, seen on farms across the country. That's why this entire situation feels so personal to so many people. It's not just about business. It's about identity, tradition, and survival. In places like Dubuque, Iowa, John Deere is more than just a name. It's the lifeline of the local economy. The factories there aren't just buildings where machines get assembled. They provide jobs, stability, and a sense of purpose for thousands of workers. Generations of families have worked for John Deere, relying on those paychecks to put food on the table and send their kids to college. Now, with the possibility of production moving to Mexico, those workers are left wondering what happens next. If John Deere follows through, the effects will ripple far beyond the factory floor. Restaurants, grocery stores, car dealerships, and countless other small businesses depend on those workers' incomes. If the factory jobs disappear, so does the money that keeps those local economies alive. For farmers, the situation is just as concerning, but for different reasons. Farming is already an expensive business, and tractors and other machinery are some of their biggest investments. If tariffs drive up the cost of John Deere equipment, farmers will have to choose between upgrading to new, more efficient machines or holding on to old, worn-out equipment. Either way, it puts them in a tough spot. And then there's the bigger question. Is John Deere putting profits over patriotism? The company has long been seen as a proud American brand, one that farmers and factory workers could count on. But if they move production to Mexico, will that trust be broken? And if so, will American farmers start looking elsewhere for their equipment?
So how devastating would this be for farmers?
It'd be very devastating. I have all my corn booked and paid for now.
Trump's plan is pretty straightforward. If a big American company tries to move jobs overseas, hit them with massive tariffs until they have no choice but to stay. It's a strategy he's used before, and now John Deere is in the crosshairs. But is this really the best way to keep jobs in America? On one hand, tariffs do put pressure on companies to keep production at home. If John Deere has to pay 200% more to bring its products back into the US, that could completely erase the cost savings of moving to Mexico. In theory, this should make businesses think twice before outsourcing. It also protects American workers and manufacturing, which is a major concern for Trump's supporters. After all, when factories close, it's not just about lost jobs, it's about entire communities losing their economic backbone. But here's the other side of the argument. Tariffs aren't just a punishment for the company, they can hurt American consumers too. If John Deere suddenly has to pay huge taxes on its imported products, they aren't going to just eat that cost. They'll pass it on to customers, farmers, and farming equipment is already crazy expensive. If prices go up even more, many farmers won't be able to afford new machinery, forcing them to stick with older, less efficient equipment.
A ban would cause a nearly $74 billion blow to the U.S. economy over the next decade, along with approximately 32,000 jobs.
Then there's the risk of a trade war. Mexico and other countries won't just sit back and take it. They could respond by putting their own tariffs on American products, making it harder for U.S. farmers to sell their crops internationally. In past trade disputes, industries like soybeans, beef, and dairy have been hit hard by retaliatory tariffs, leaving American farmers stuck with excess supply and fewer buyers. John Deere isn't the first company to move production overseas, and let's be honest, it probably won't be the last. This has been happening for decades, and it's left a lasting impact on the U.S. economy. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.